Anton, what's working from a sales perspective at Joist right now?
Ooh, that's a
Big
good
question.
question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I will tell you, and this might sound a little funny, but since I'm getting experienced people to come in, the one request that I've had is that I don't want to hear about anything successful that you did in a previous company. I only want to hear about everything that went wrong or what you should have done better. And, ironically, to your question of what's been going, is that we've been identifying all the learning lessons or just focusing in on our learning lessons and previous things to make sure we don't fall into those pitfalls again.
Okay, Anton. So, what do you think needs to go into a successful GTM strategy?
Let's kind of start a little bit from the beginning. What makes go-to-market successful in like a 0 to 1 is responsiveness. Right? Hey, I'm interested in this. I want to buy. Like I've seen situations where, because outside of working for Joyce, I also like give advice and help out, and have made a couple of like angel investments here and there in startups, and so I get to see things, which is really exciting in different pockets. But I can't tell you enough how I've seen situations where you might have a founder-led sales right now, and they've done a bunch of demos, and then someone's emailed in saying, "This is great. Can I have a proposal?" And then they totally forgot about it and never wrote it back. And it's fair because they're doing all of these other things. And by nature, sales, this might be the first time in their life that they've done anything sales related. So in those early stages, like you don't have to overcomplicate it, but like responsiveness, I think is really important because you got to build trust.
What are most common mistakes when people think about go-to-market?
That everything just happens easy. Or, you know what? My product is the best. Like, my baby's not ugly. And sometimes it is, or sometimes it's just not fully there yet. And understand that, know when you take points of reflection, either if it's with a product or if it's a sales motion you're doing or it's a marketing outreach. I think we have a tendency to just try harder, try more, try harder. No, screw it. Like you tried it, it didn't work. It's fine. Learn from it and learn from those failures and then try something again. And maybe try something that no one else has tried before.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bricks and Bytes podcast, where we dive into construction and AEC technology. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology, and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode. Are you interested in finding out how companies scale past the $10 million ARR ceiling? This episode is one of the number of episodes forming part of our new go-to-market guide, which reveals how industry leaders scaled past the stubborn $10 million ARR mark using strategies specifically designed for AEC. Discover the proven land and expand blueprint, pricing models at work, and real case studies from companies with significant exits. To get your copy, visit www.bricks-bytes.com/GTM.
All right, Anton, we got you in here about 30 minutes ago, and we have just been chatting and laughing for the last 30 minutes or so. And then we looked at the time and thought, oh shit, we should actually hit record and start doing this. So,
I don't know. Like I said, you guys are my homie. It's been great to be back in your company.
And maybe we should not start on that though. Maybe we should just fire a question straight at you, because otherwise we'll just end up doing another half hour of this one. But anyway, just to quickly brief everyone, this is one of the episodes we're doing with the leaders of go-to-market within construction tech, Anton being one of those people. So Anton, we're super happy to have you as part of this. And this is your second time on Bricks and Bytes. For the record, you politely reminded us of that once you came in. So thank you. Anton, so I guess let's just dive in. Tell us like your journey with in go-to-market in construction tech.
Yeah. It's been an interesting one. So I grew up in construction. So, my dad, being an immigrant from Croatia, landed here, started working construction right away, identified, masonry as something that he was interested in, and then built a pretty reputable business here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, as a kid, I spent most of my weekends on job sites or after school going with him to, put out bids or take assessments to put estimates together. Then through college and high school and college, I was basically, summer jobs working out in the field. But then also working here and living here in the San Francisco Bay Area, like most, I was like, okay, I want to get into tech. So I started journeying to tech, found sales along the way. But it wasn't until 2017 when just through a random kind of connection, I met Mo, founder of HoloBuilder.
Shout out to Mo.
Yeah,
He listens to every episode, by the way.
Yeah, just after it's released, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Love it. And Mo and I started talking, and Mo convinced me to join him there at HoloBuilder as the first sales leader. Well, the only sales leader because we.
What was his pitch?
I'll tell you actually how I got into that. It wasn't so much Mo, but I had a couple opportunities like on the table, and I had to make a decision. So I talked the first one, and my parents were curious, and so I told them what the first one is. They're like, we have no idea what that what is that? And then the next one, like, I don't even understand why anyone would buy something like that. And then the third one, which was HoloBuilder, my dad was like, that one. Like, remember when we would go to like construction sites and we had the disposable camera? And if I saw something was wrong, I was taking a picture of it. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. He's like, that's what this guy is doing.
Uh-huh.
That's what you need to do. And I'm like, you know what? For the first time in maybe 20 years, I will listen to my parents again.
Yeah.
And I started on that journey. And then in that journey, I just felt like such a massive love and appreciation for being back in this sector because that's how I grew up. And I mean, to this day, I still have cousins who are masons or carpenters or plumbers and all these other type of roles. So it's just kind of felt like home.
And where are you now? Because you made a good move recently.
Yeah, I have joined with Joist AI. So joined up with Rohan Jawali, who you've also had on the program a couple times. And what Joist is doing, it's addressing the pain in around proposal writing. So we have identified a problem, and it's a problem that stretches across A, E, and C. And we identified as AI as being the solution to that. So, we are an AI company, but we don't say or feel like we are just AI.
Mm-hmm.
We are a company that identified an issue and a problem, and we're using AI to solve it. And it's been really, really great. I joined up with Rohan in July, and since then it's been go time, and it brought some other individuals from the network in. So it feels a little bit of like bringing the band back together. But
Nice.
my main focus has really been hiring on individuals who are known and are proven and have also the experience in construction tech already, and especially around, this stage of where we are.
And how many of you are there?
I think we're up to 21 now.
Okay, but from sales?
Oh, from a sales perspective, you have, that's a good
You
question.
can't count yourself as two people.
There's four of us right now. But there is, we're going to further grow, but we're also taking this approach where we really see ourselves as we want to be Swiss Army knives. And as being Swiss Army knives, it means that we're doing multiple other things too, like helping out with onboarding, participating in customer success, helping out in support, because the feeling and idea that we have is that this group will be a foundational group that will have a very clear understanding of all different types and parts of the business, so that as we continue to expand and grow, they can, participate or even move into other directions.
Okay.
So Anton, what's working from a sales perspective at Joist right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I will tell you, and this might sound a little funny, but since I'm getting experienced people to come in, the one request that I've had is that I don't want to hear about anything successful that you did in a previous company. I only want to hear about everything that went wrong or what you should have done better. And, ironically, to your question of what's been going, well, is that we've been identifying all the learning lessons or just focusing in on our learning lessons and previous things to make sure we don't fall into those pitfalls again. And so I feel with that, it's actually kept us ahead. So we've actually been able to put in a lot of processes that you probably wouldn't be seeing in a company our size and at stage right now, which has been great. Because it's helped facilitate us to do more with less people.
Yeah, because you're classified as early stage, Joist. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But with your experience, what you're saying is that you're coming in and putting more of a perhaps not so stereotypical early stage sales function within the company, and reaping the benefits, hopefully.
Yeah. Like from day one, understand what the buyer journey is, build sales stages around that buyer journey. Try to then already start setting up understanding of like conversions between each steps. Where are leaks going to happen? How do we plug those leaks now? Really identify and look at the conversion of someone who is a buyer to now a customer. What is that handoff? Well, what did we learn? What do we always do wrong in handoffs in the past? And let's make sure we don't do that here. So that we facilitate a very smooth experience across the board. I think, when I look back in time, even to like HoloBuilder, and even further, like when I was leading sales at Contentful, which not even in construction technology, but you see a lot of the similar patterns. You weren't putting a lot of emphasis on some of these minute little details, and those minute little details or problems became larger and larger issues. So yeah, we're taking a much different approach. So yeah. So golden rule, can't talk about any past success. Only focus on things that you should have done better.
Okay.
Can you shed some light on like what's IRR right now, or whatever you can say?
ARR right now, I like to keep that a little bit close to the chest, but things are going very, very well. And maybe over some cocktails or pints.
That's okay.
Such a curveball.
Rohan and I have just taken an approach in this that we just we want to focus on the quality of our work and not really get into the market and kind of beat a chest, if you will.
So at the stage where you are, whatever the number is, what are the key things that you are doing with go-to-market?
Yeah. Right now, and actually it's fun that you brought that up because this is what the rest of my afternoon is going to look like, is putting a heavy focus on revenue operations, right? Making sure our CRM is facilitating and functioning in the process and methods that we're putting into place around the sales process, ensuring that the data that's going into reports and dashboards are clean, or at least we're at a state of like trusting them. But then also really reviewing and understanding that the system itself and how we structure, softwares that are supporting us are enabled so that they can evolve with us. Because in sales, it's always an evolution. So how I'm selling right now may look very different 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months from now. So it's really important to me is that when we structure something, it's not like we're locked into it. It has to be in a way that it will evolve as we evolve and as the market evolves. So yes, so that is a very big component, because I also feel that a lot of companies look at RevOps as something a little bit later in the game. But again, learning lessons of the past was like, no, we are going to put a lot of emphasis on this on the front. And again, by doing that, it actually gives you more bandwidth, because you're having easier visibility on everything that's going on, and people are not losing time, especially around like data input, which every salesperson hates. Like, oh, I got to put my notes into CRM. Great. Everybody hates that. Let's facilitate and make this so that is just a very easy thing for you to do. Updating stages. Okay, you hate that. Well, let's build automations so you don't have to think about it, or understand that. But then now I have a full view of what stages are and feel that this is actually correct and legit. So we don't have to get into these pipeline reviews where we're challenging things because we have built signals, that the system knows to then facilitate that, yes, this is moved to a next stage.
So it's like giving people the tools that they do so they can actually focus on, let's just say, selling rather than everything that goes into that.
That's it. But then also being able to, have the ability that it's going to give me what I need in the process.
How automated is the process in your case, the sale process?
It's, the automation, I would say, is not perfect, but this is something that we're really focusing on building right now. A lot of it right now is done by like kind of email triggers. So email goes out, certain text in the email. Okay, this is a signal that, it's moved from this step to this step. Other things like using software to capture notes and summarize those notes, but then making sure that the notes then over time are getting tailored to actual data that I really want to know, not the fact that, the person on the call has got 2 kids and lives in Nebraska. Like, so there is some tweaking, but I want to get to a stage that this is just very fluid. That I think there's always going to be some level of human intervention, but what is the pain points for somebody who is in a sale, who is a seller, and what does their day-to-day look like? How much time is required to do these tasks? And can we find automation that can take those tasks off so they can focus more on selling? But then also like giving the client a top-notch experience. Like this is really important in this sector because people buy from people they trust and companies they trust. And how you develop trust is responsiveness, and being just honest.
Okay, Anton. So, what do you think needs to go into a successful GTM strategy?
Maybe you can also indicate like levels where the startup or company is, like early stage, like 0 to 1 million, 1 to 10, and above 10 million dollars.
So, what makes them like, I think there's a lot of things that could go into that question, and you could see in a lot of different ways. And then as Martin was talking about it, like dependent on your stage is a whole different set of problems. So let's kind of start a little bit from the beginning. What makes go-to-market successful in like a 0 to 1 is responsiveness. Right? Hey, I'm interested in this. I want to buy. Like I've seen situations where, because outside of working for Joist, I also like give advice and help out, and have made a couple of like angel investments here and there in startups, and so I get to see things, which is really exciting in different pockets. But I can't tell you enough how I've seen situations where you might have a founder-led sales right now, and they've done a bunch of demos, and then someone's emailed in saying, "This is great. Can I have a proposal?" And then they totally forgot about it and never wrote back. And it's fair because they're doing all of these other things, and by nature, sales, this might be the first time in their life that they've done anything sales related. So in those early stages, like you don't have to overcomplicate it, but like responsiveness, I think is really important because you got to build trust. Also, I think people have a tendency in the early days to maybe sugarcoat a little bit of where things are. You don't need to do that. Like, again, people want to buy from companies and people they trust. Like, for instance, here at Joist, we're very open. Hey, we're an early stage startup. We're building this. This is what we have, and this is where it's evolving. But, for the sake of transparency, this is where we're at. And if you got a big problem with that, and that's something that you don't want, that's okay. Hey, that's all right. But we want you to understand, where things are. And I mean, luckily enough, people are really appreciative of that transparency that we have. And to be honest with you, it hasn't hurt us in our sales. Like I've had people going like, dude, you're crazy to be honest like that. No, like we want trusted partners throughout this whole thing too, because it's their advice and feedback, which is going to evolve this product to the whole next level.
Everyone talks to everyone in its industry, right?
Completely. And then I'd say like later on down the road, like after $1 million, like Martin, like this is where a lot of process stuff really comes into play. You have identified a repeatable process, and now you're building the structure around it so that you can just start managing that process. as a sales leader, there becomes a time where, really it's more about activity management, because without activity, you're not building pipeline, right? People kind of forget that sometimes. They're like, oh man, like, what's your sales? What's your sales? Like, oh, I need to know your sales. Like, yeah, it's important. But from a sales leadership point of view, it's how much pipeline am I creating and how much activity am I doing around that pipeline, because I need that to then get these sales that you want to know about.
Yeah. So what's the first like things people should do when they start selling a product? Is it just a matter of picking up the phone and calling people?
I always say is like, I mean, it's interesting in construction tech right now because you have a combination of people like from the field who are like, hey, I did this role. There was this workflow in there that was painful. It sucked. I'm going to stop working at this at this GC or engineer architectural firm, and I'm going to build this. And then another group who are kind of outside the sector, but amazing technical talent, go in and research and try to understand a lot of things and then try to bring it to market. So you kind of have these two camps that are forming right now. Not to say which one is better than the other, but that's just kind of how it's looking like to me right now. And so what I find is like, if you're one of these people who are actually coming from the sector and doing this, tap into your network. People give a lot of time to those who, have done the role, or, you have a solution to a problem, but that problem because you lived it. People will give you the time to hear about it. And then the other camp where you're outside the sector, you found a problem, but you're out of the sector, and now you're coming in and pushing it. That's it's a little bit different because you're not going to have the network around you. You may have some who are kind of like, oh well, you don't know, you didn't really do this job before. But I think with that group, then it's just like really, it's hustling and getting people on the phone, because it's all about conversations. I'm also a firm believer in this thought process that, the founders, like led sales shouldn't be forever, depended on the ACV of the deal. Is that 10 new clients or is that 2?
What's ACV?
Oh, average contract value size. So, if you're selling a product that's $100,000 and you're like founder led sales, getting to try to do 10 of those, probably not the best idea. Try to get 1 or 2 of them in. But if you have a product that's like $10,000, $5,000 or whatever, maybe you want to get 10 clients in before you start looking at a salesperson, just because then you've gone through the, the know-how and the learnings of it. But it's a hustle, because no matter what, in the end of the day, if you don't have people to talk to, like, you're going to just be sitting around looking for an email to say, I want to buy. That's never going to happen.
Not gonna happen. Yeah, so
Not
it's like,
anyways.
as much as people say, and like, it's obvious, but sales is a numbers game, huh?
Yeah. It's a combination of an art and science. I think in the old days, they always said it was an art. Oh, it's an art. Hey, so and so, that person there, that's a salesperson. Like, or there was a study once, I remember. Don't ask me where it came from. I just remember this kind of anecdote from it. It was like, if you're looking at people who are going to college, the people who were both best destined for sales were the people at the college party serving the alcohol.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Again, sales, no degrees. There's no bachelor's, master's, PhDs. Doesn't exist. Maybe I
That's
get an online
interesting.
certificate. Like,
You made me try to think whether I was the person cleaning out drinks.
Same, I've
or
done the
drinking
same.
now.
I was definitely doing that after a few.
Drunk salesman. Probably not a good combination.
No.
But yeah, it's it's a journey. But anyway, so going back to the art and science, like, yeah, so a lot of it was thought about as an art, and I think there is still an art to it. And that art is more so about reading and understanding people, but also kind of like, I like to ask salespeople, what is their definition of sales? Yeah. Hey, your whole profession's in sales. Maybe this is a fun question for you, for everybody else. Like, hey, you're a sales professional. So what is your definition of sales? And sometimes you get the person who's just like, well, you get a small group that's kind of caught off guard. and has never thought about that. And then you have another group that is like gives you like the Oxford Dictionary, you know, a bit of it. But then you have another group that, you know, has their own definition. For me, my definition is like transfer of like energy and passion from myself to another person.
I was going to say exchange of value.
Yeah. There you go. But it's an interesting question for, you know, I love asking this to salespeople because your whole career is in sales.
Yeah.
Sales. So what is your definition of sales?
Anton, we mentioned a bit more process driven as things get later. Are there some processes that people should be following in the earliest days?
Yeah. Well, I think it's not about following the process, it's building the process. And I think as you're going through and you're doing your first initial calls, you know, you've done a couple demos now, is understanding the pattern of how the buyer wants to buy. Right. So a lot of times people come in and go like, okay, this is how it's going to happen. It's going to be, I'm going to schedule a demo. I'm going to do the demo and they're going to close. Well, in actuality, they may be, okay, I do one demo. I like what I see. I want a second demo because now I want to get other people involved in this to see what they think. Maybe a third step is, okay, I want to do a trial or a pilot of this product. And then the next step is, well, there's always contract negotiation. All right. And then the fifth step is close. So you got to spend time and try to like look at patterns. I'm always studying and looking for patterns because then when I find the pattern, I could try to build a process around it. So, you know, for instance, if it wasn't, you know, Contentful or Meltwater or HoloBuilder or now Joist, right? I sat a ridiculous amount of time just listening to calls. And if it wasn't just the calls, it was reading emails. It was just understanding how is the market wanting to buy. And that could be as easy as taking your last 15 demos, last 20 demos, and on a piece of paper saying, okay, this is call one. Oh, we had a call two, and then this and this and this. And you start writing it all out. And you're like, oh my God, there's a pattern here. You know, it's like a 2 demo close. It's a 1 demo close. It's a 2 demo trial, then close. Like, but these are the steps that the buyer is telling us how they want and how they need to go to get to a decision. And the crazy thing is, like I said, a pattern just starts forming organically. And so then I would build processes around that pattern because I don't want to force the way I think that they should buy. Because it's like, you know, it's like running against the wind. Instead, I would rather be running with the wind, but structuring it so I can facilitate it so we could run even faster.
That's interesting. So speaking of patterns, and so for example, in the Joist example, do you sell to only one type of customer or
So
different?
I would say we sell to one department. And then inside of the department can be quote unquote different customer. I mean, even the concept of like customer, what is customer? It's more of like who's the decision maker, who's your champion, who's the influencer, who's the user, you know, start formulating an idea around that because in the end of the day, all sales decisions are happening in like a committee in a group.
Okay, so how do you figure out, like, how do you segment and figure out who is the customer, who is the buyer,
influencer,
or perhaps if folks are selling to different types of companies within the industry, so general contractor, architectural firm, engineering firm, how do they create messaging around to reach this particular heart or brain?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and so I mean, if we looked at the A, the E, and the C, you know, especially for us, we find similarities. They're not similar in terms of titles, but they're similar into how they're striving and getting to a decision, right? And so, typically speaking, it starts with some individual who has seen the problem or experienced a pain so much that they are open to understanding about solutions or actively looking for solutions, right? And that individual could be someone as much as just an entry-level person doing one certain motion, all the way up to a C-suite individual, right? And so it's really an idea of who is that first person who takes that call and what role are they going to be playing in this entire process that kind of dictates then the strategy around that. But we know, and I think this holds true for not just what we do, but other groups, right? So you have whatever group that you're selling into, and again, it's interesting in construction technology. I also see there's this divergence of like two kind of sales motions. You have the people doing project sales, which was a part of my life for years. And now I've moved to just straight enterprise, one deal done type of solution, right? So those are two different motions with two varying aspects of it, but I always hold a lot of value to the first person who calls us or we call them and does that call. And then I use them through question asking to really understand who are the others who get involved in this decision and what kind of role are they playing. I mean, economic buyer is, who's signing the contract is kind of always easy to determine, because there's only a certain level that's going to facilitate that. Where it gets a little bit more tricky is understanding of like who's influencing, who's that person who's kind of whispering like, yeah,
A champion?
this. Yes. Well, there's the champion, and I would actually put an influencer as slightly different. Like I would actually say at times, like in our space, IT is becoming a very interesting influencer, right? Because certain solutions, especially around the AI side, IT is getting involved now. And if you get some of IT backing where they're like, this looks great, we have no concerns, they're kind of like, and I've seen it for us, they influence a bit. Like, yeah, I feel good with this. Actually, this is really cool. You guys should try this out. Yeah, I have no concerns about this.
And are we
they're
speaking?
providing whispers.
Are we speaking about like a large enterprise sales or like medium size? Because I guess that could differ.
Totally. I mean, I always find this interesting is the term enterprise. How many enterprise deals that you have? So
you hear it everywhere in sales.
Yeah. And so it I guess, if you're in the investor community, an enterprise deal is like 100,000 and above. Okay. Well, if I'm calling a 50-person architectural firm, and let's say my solution is like $30,000, and they're asking me, is this an enterprise solution? I'm like, yes, for you and your size, this is an enterprise solution. So it's like the word enterprise deal gets kind of mixed up because there's like two different, our buyers, to them, enterprise is company wide, but I'm a 20-person company, but I'm not going to pay you $100,000. Like, get out of here. Like, you're crazy. But, I'll do this. But then to, the investment group, it's like, so we work with the terminology a bit. So, we use a lot of like company wide, oh, this is one deal, like company wide. Everyone's got it. Yes, it's enterprise.
Yeah, I guess makes more sense for people. And when you say when you send to the 30 architectural firm, and he asks whether this is enterprise, and you say yes for you, and he's like, "Don't offend me."
Well, and that's why sometimes the naming conventions around pricing, because everybody has like, oh, okay, you're this size, you're in this bucket, oh, you're in that bucket, you're in this bucket, kind of thing.
You just say to him on the phone, "Oh, what do you want me to call it? Just whatever."
I'm just gonna call you superstar.
Okay, how about ideal customer profile creation? What's your rule book?
Yeah, especially in this sector. In the beginning, I try to keep it a bit easy. So I say to myself, what is the data that I can get that can help me like segment the customer? Revenue data or construction value data is difficult to come by unless, you're really getting it from the client itself. But a data set that you can use to, structure an ICP. So first, like, who your buyer is. Like, okay, I'm selling to general contractors. Okay, I got that. But then in general contractors, what is the size? How do we break out that size? Do we use certain lists that we buy to break it out? For us, or from my experience, it's been easier just to do it by employee size. So break them up into buckets of employee size. then as I go through like selling motions and seeing where people are buying, we've identified that this is a solution for general contractors. We have identified that they are this is the group that's going to buy, right? Break it into segments, then understand which of those segments is buying more actively than other segments, and then start double downing into where you're seeing more activity at that time. And then if other areas, so if I got a small, I'm like, okay, I sell to general contractors, great. Who do you think you're going to sell to? I think we're going to sell to the large enterprises, the Bechtel, the Turners of the world. Great. Well, in actuality, no, we're selling to regional players. Okay. Well, for the time being, my ICP is, general contractors, regional general contractors, or SMB, some like to call it. But then over time, we're going to move more upwards to enterprise, or perhaps go to the long tail to the smaller local. But when it comes to ICP, I mean, the sector doesn't make it super hard. But I would actually say that there's another caveat to that. If I was selling to general contractors, I'd also structure it by kind of subdivisions. Like you have certain general contractors who focus on certain segments, perhaps specialties or hospitals or other type of things. And you may also find that your solution fits better. Like for instance, data centers is a huge thing, right? You have a lot of solutions out there that are selling to, let's say, contractors. However, they're finding a lot more movement in the contractors who are building data centers. So then it would be like my ICP is, contractors of a certain size, but with the focus on data centers.
What would be the best message? Sorry, the best medium to get the message across? The presentation? Is it a phone call? Is it a demo? Is it brochure?
I don't necessarily know if there's an exact silver bullet to this because, okay, most people hate cold calling. And especially if you're selling on a project level and you're getting people while they're out in the field. Then I've also seen and heard of companies using text messaging now. But then, my friends or former clients who all work in these companies hate getting text messages because they find it so intrusive. How did you get my phone number? Like, who are you? But there's still always a play for outbound, and I think it is important, but it is a bit tricky. The demo itself is very important. I think having a good sales deck. That I don't like slides. I'm not a fan of slides in sales presentations, but in this space, a sales deck is important because what'll happen is that the buyer is going to want that deck because then they have to sell this internally. So you need to give them some collateral. If they like what you're doing, they have to get other people involved in this decision. So you have to empower them to be able to also sell this internally, because usually people don't want to just throw their supervisors or anyone on a random call with a salesperson because they thought it looked cool. They need to kind of grease the skids a bit with the people above them. So you have to empower them to do that. I also think LinkedIn is actually a very good source. I put a lot of focus in trying to get people to follow, like for instance, like for us and Joyce on LinkedIn. When I first got into this sector, I was actually really kind of shocked about how many people in the sector are actually on LinkedIn. I didn't really think that that would be the case. I thought LinkedIn was more people working in tech or other areas, but LinkedIn has a very strong presence of people in AEC. And AEC people are active enough that they organically start following companies or products that they think are interesting. And when they're following you, and as you're doing posts, it's just feeding into their news feed. So they're getting information about you without you really having to be intrusive by calling them or emailing them all the time or anything like that. So
How about events? Because I noticed you have been at a few recently via LinkedIn. That's how I learned it.
I think it's a good tool, but I didn't have that feeling in the beginning, but I warmed up to it over time. Actually, Jenny and Harry at HoloBuilder, who were the two that were running our LinkedIn instance, they changed me because I saw the power of what they were doing and the reach that they were building, and it was like, okay, no, this is actually something.
Okay, dokie.
How about videos? Because in 30 seconds or a 1 minute video, you probably can explain exactly your product and how the product works. You can show how the product works. Do you find people using video as a way of selling?
Yes, but maybe at a different part in the buying process.
Mhm.
So, for instance, like I've seen people trying to do the video to try to get a demo, but most of those are kind of like cutesy, where they like hold like a sign with my name on it or something. Like it's happening to me,
Yeah.
and sometimes I look at it myself, like, oh, did that get my attention? In the beginning, it did a little bit. I'm like, oh, they put the effort to make this video like for me. Like, oh, I feel so bad. But then I'm like, no, I'm taking a demo because I feel bad that they made this effort to try to, reach out to me. But I feel like
Hourly.
the short videos going to empower that champion and trying to give them the ability to help sell what you've been doing internally. That's where I like using like the 1 minute or 30-second kind of video. I think that's you already got people's interest.
Hey, Anton, how from that point, how many times should you? I don't want to use the word pester. Actually, I remember from our first podcast we done, you used the term professional persistence. So how many times is this question does not make sense, but hopefully you get it. How many times should you professionally persist?
Always.
Until you say, please do not message me again.
Please do not professionally persist me.
My favorite is like, please excuse the persistence. No, I mean there is a point where you just have to throw in the towel. So I would say, and I learned this a bit from Roman, who I had the pleasure of working with, who really set out the SDR motion, both at HoloBuilder and at Pharaoh, and has now joined me at Joist. And that is like there is a, it's like tapping. So you kind of, you focus, you go out, you do your outreach, typically 4, 5, maybe even 6 attempts if nothing's coming back to you. It's not like you throw in the towel, but you just take a breath. Maybe give them a month or two. Perhaps they have something going on. Maybe they're too busy. Totally fair. I don't want to annoy them that when I come back to them again, that they're going to have this negative feeling towards either me or the company I represent. So yes, so there is a stage where let's just maybe give up or throw in the towel are the wrong words, but to give a pause. And then, what a lot of people do, and I know Roman does this a lot too, is, like look at news, you remember who these clients are, maybe have a list that you're always studying and then seeing things that happen. Like, oh, ENR just announced some big news around them. Okay. I haven't outreached that person 3 months. I'm going to grab that information and come back to them, because people also respond to personalized stuff. Like after decades of just getting spam emails, it just doesn't have the same bite as it used to. But, oh, hey, you went to San Diego State. I went to San Diego State. Or, hey, you went to the University College Dublin. I went to University College Dublin. I see that you're working here. By the way, I was working there. Trying to find that personal connection is important, but it does take effort.
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
Okay, what are most common mistakes when people think about go-to-market?
That everything just happens easy, or you know what, my product is the best, like my baby's not ugly, and sometimes it is, or sometimes it's just not fully there yet, and understand that, know when you take points of reflection either if it's with a product or if it's a sales motion you're doing or it's a marketing outreach. I think we have a tendency to just try harder, try more, try harder. No, screw it. Like you tried it, it didn't work, it's fine. Learn from it and learn from those failures, and then try something again. And maybe try something that no one else has tried before. Like we kind of fall into these routines all the time. And I think we're at a stage now, especially around sales and outreach and everything else, that it's, be creative, be different, stand out some way. Don't just do the same thing over and over and over and over, because also, things progress, the market evolves. But from a general term, that's what I see. Like people just get stuck in a particular motion and don't try to experiment outside of that.
So regarding this change, like you mentioned, that things change. So, like, what is like the one or two things that you noticed like change quite quite significantly in the last
Mine's
let's say 5 years?
His Polish whilst on air.
A tough week.
Great.
Just
Martin is great. I think it's maybe even shorter than the last 5 years. I think it's AI in general. How am I leveraging AI? And that could be both, like external or internal. But I think AI is opening up, and I mean, and I don't want to repeat all the same stuff that you probably have other people saying, but it's opening up new capabilities that we didn't really think of before. For instance, it could be something as like, leveraging AI to understand your data better, leveraging AI to do outreach or compose emails, or, help with, again, summaries from calls and a variety of things. But it's a change to our workflow that is different. And I think that there are a lot of people who are talking about AI, but maybe not actually fully using it or fully still understand how to use it. And it's been funny to me in this AI journey that I've been on, and because I have, even friends going like, okay, you're working for an AI company. Like, what is the one skill now that, you've retained from this, or that I need to know? And I'm prompting. Asking questions of AI, it all comes down to that. And you can, if you master that, whatever your role is, you can figure out AI in some way. And I think, but it's also an evolution, right? It's becoming a prompting master. And then from there, it's understanding agents. And, there's a lot of, all the open AI and everything now gives you capability to start creating agents on your own. And then kind of evolving to that, they're giving it tasks to do. But I think we're all at this reflection point right now where either, we get on this and start understanding it and getting ahead of the curve, or, try to do something with it later. But I think AI in general, I don't think AI right now is taking anyone's jobs. AI still needs a lot of adult supervision. But I think it opens up a lot of efficiencies internally that will enable people to do actually more than what we could before in the past. So, but my thing is,
Anton.
Prompt.
Prompting. Curious on your thoughts on new customer acquisition versus expanding existing customer accounts. What's your thoughts?
Land and expand, right? It is, land and expand expansion is a total team play. 100% team play, right? You can't expand. I mean, okay, it depends on what you're selling, which is a whole different thing, right? If you're selling user licenses, or you have this like kind of, menu approach where you're buying one, but you want to convert people to buy two, to menu two, or whatever it may be. So it comes in all different shapes and sizes. But, the new is very much a like marketing sales kind of motion, right? This is how that teamwork's working. Whereas expansion is very much a combination of customer success, sales, marketing, but also product, right? So what am I upselling? right? Okay, user license, that's already there, but maybe I don't have anything to upsell them to right now, right? So what is that going to be? How are we going to put that together? But I get really excited about expansion. I love expansion. It's a great indicator that you're doing something right and whoever your buyer is believes in you. But the motion to expand is a lot more dynamic. I mean, everything is dynamic in sales, but there is a different kind of level to it because, again, if you think about this combination of teamwork that needs to go in to make expansion happen, a lot of times people don't think about that. They just think like, oh, they're going to like it and they're going to buy more. Well, no, there's a lot that goes into that. Like, do they feel supported? Do they trust your roadmap? Do they like the things that you're building? And so forth. So there's yes, it's a lot more dynamic.
Well, I love that. Land and expand. I'll never forget that one either.
It's but the fun thing about land and expand too is really how you build the internal processes around facilitating that, right? Because a lot of time people think that you talk about the sales funnel, so it's called the land funnel, right? Landing deals funnel. But what about the expanding funnel?
Yeah. So by this, do we mean that we provide enough value to land and then try to find ways to expand later, or have already a bunch of products that we know we would like to expand, and we're not revealing everything on the first date, let's say?
That's a great question. Again, depends on where the company is.
That one's hold on. That one, the second one is expand and land.
But the thing is, it depends. I mean, if the funny thing which kind of dictates that motion is going to be how you structure your sales compensation plan. I'm a seller.
Oh yeah.
And I'm making my money on landing, that I'm going to try to get them to buy as much as they can. If my compensation plan is different, or if the salesperson gets the same Miller commission as landing a new deal as expanding, it all comes down to comp.
Yeah,
but that's going to determine what the salesperson's probably going to do.
But on the other side, you got a customer who, from my understanding and experience, we really don't like to be. We just want to get a value from what we pay, and that's probably the best possible outcome we can get. And everything on top in construction, it's like, is it really needed?
I'm a firm believer in whatever that you're selling has to match the workflow of the individual. Workflow is so problem solution through workflow. I don't even know if I just made this up or not, but I think that is important to retain that value. And then working through whatever workflow you have, if you're getting enough value through whatever was sold, great. But as you go through that journey, and we have built this product to address additional pain points within that same workflow, you would be more inclined to buy more, to unlock, to retain more value out of it. Because again, this is situated towards just a workflow itself. Like workflow, and I think you guys had a question about what's the difference between selling outside of this sector, because I've had enough experience of selling to non-construction companies. I would say is having a product that matches a workflow. Because workflows are so important in this space, whereas workflows aren't as critical to, let's say, to other organizations and other sectors. I think here it's matching value to that workflow, which is really gonna sets it apart than others.
Quick break to let you know, if you're getting value from this conversation, we've compiled insights like these into our comprehensive construction tech go-to-market guide. Inside, you'll find the exact frameworks top AEC tech companies use to break past the $10 million ARR mark, detailed case studies from successful exits, and actionable playbooks for pricing, sales team structure, and enterprise expansion. Head to www.bricks-bytes.com/GTM and transform how you approach growth in construction tech. Now back to our conversation.
Okay, you touched on the compensation. So, what's the what is the current way of compensating
Yeah,
sales
I was actually gonna
people?
broaden this question a little bit and just say like, how do you incentivize sales teams? Like, how do you get them selling, baby?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's well, you got to have. So the golden rule, again, this differs between what size company you are. I'm going to just focus on, let's say, Series A and Series B.
Perfect.
Keep it easy right there, right?
Yeah.
To me, the golden rule is simplicity. Someone has to clearly understand what they make from the deal. Can't be any kind of weird nuanced stuff. I've seen some crazy plans where if you do X, then you get Y, but if you kind of do Y, you can get A, and it just doesn't make any sense. And
To confuse the guy.
Yeah.
Or girl.
So keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. That is the golden rule when it comes to comp. Now, how to incentivize them? You need to ask yourself, what is important to you? So if it's important to me that they're only closing deals, I don't care about anything else, great. Then here's X amount of commission for every deal that you close. Easy, done. If there are other things or other components like, hey, I want them to be more engaged with the buyers post acquisition, you can get creative and create some like what they would call variable bonuses, right? That's incentivizing them to do a different motion. So anyways, you have to sit down and understand what are your priorities and what kind of motion or focus do you want to give the salespeople, because what they focus on will be dictated by that plan. I have seen success in the past too, in past companies I've been in, where we would have a team bonus. Like, hey, we hit our quarterly number. Doesn't matter if you hit your number or not, but the overall company hit a quarterly number. Here's a small bonus. Okay, well, that's a driver. People are going to be inclined to maybe not just sandbag, or maybe they're not going to be inclined to not help out their team members, because guess what? I still get some money if I help the greater group. So there's a lot of fun things that you can do. But again, the key thing is simplicity. People just need to really clearly understand what they're going to make. I also, just to say this, I hear this term a lot, which, it typically comes from more experienced individuals, is like all salespeople are coin operated. And
Say that again, sorry?
all salespeople are coin operated.
Okay.
Coin operated salespeople. Like, okay.
Coin operated.
Yeah.
Put the coin in.
And that's it. And I get that. It also drives me nuts when I hear it, because I don't know. I see this like 1980 sale where I have to go out and sell steak knives or something like that. And selling isn't like that anymore, right? Sales is about relationship building. And I mean, it was, but I feel like it's even more so now, especially when I talk about our sector. But sales is also caring about your clients and caring about your buyers. And when you make it sound like it's coin operated, it makes it sound like salespeople don't give a crap about anything other than getting a paycheck. And I guess there is truth to that. That's why people get into sales. But I just, that phrase or terminology, just, it makes me feel dirty.
Yeah. Not nice. Anton, what is there like a trait that distinguishes like average sales to top performers? Average salesperson, should I say, to top performers?
Oh, that's a good question. And I think we could have spent a lot of time on it, but I'm going to try to give you a quick one. Things that I've seen that different is is grit. So I look at people who have a consistency in kind of overall emotion or behavior, because sales is like up and down, right? So you have to, it's one thing to be consistent in your sales, but it's another thing to be consistent as just like a normal human being. I've seen salespeople have a hard time with like the ups. They're going crazy. Let's all go out and party, to the times when things are down and they're kicking stuff or hitting walls and all of these type of things. Like, no, like that just doesn't work. That's way too much of an emotional swing, right? You need to have some consistency there. I also find another, and these are traits that I look for in people. Another thing is I was saying grit. It's one thing to hustle, but it's another thing to go through the grind, right? making sure that you're following up with everyone, making sure that you're answering things in a very appropriate like timeline, making sure that like, hey, it's Saturday and I had a client ask me a question. I could sit here and kind of keep on watching TV, or do I take a step back and answer that person? Like, right? It's just like going through the motions and making sure the job is done. That's why whenever I interview people, I ask them like, what's like kind of some kind of dirty job that they did. Do they understand the value of $1, and do they understand the value, the effort to make $1? That to me is like grit. Another part of this is no sharp elbows. Nobody wants to work. We all love Ronaldo, but I think in the end of the day, if we met people or his teammates, they would say he was probably the worst person to be on a team with. So, right?
Okay.
I don't need Ronaldo. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, Ronaldo's successful, and the Ronaldo of sales would be very successful, but Ronaldo of sales.
What about Zinedine?
What's that?
What about Zinedine Zidane?
He's a coach now. Or, I don't know if he's still coaching, but I would take him. I think. Just don't headbutt anybody in the chest during game time.
We're not gonna go to Mike Tyson, but I wanted to ask.
You know what I mean? Like, you have to have a collaborative team experience, and people can poison that pretty quickly.
I wanted to ask about what is the right way of charging?
Ooh,
A lot.
You know what? I mean, the fundamental thing is making sure that you're selling and not going bankrupt in the process. So understanding your margins is like number one. Number two with that is it goes back down to simplicity, right? So I've seen, selling by square footage on a per project basis. Okay. But then I'm trying to sell that, and then the buyer's just like, I don't even know the square footage, or I don't even know, I'm only going to use your system in this little
square
room.
foot.
Yeah.
So that it makes things complicated. Or it's like, hey, I want to sell this so that, on the construction value. I get construction value. I also always hear everyone complain about it. How am I getting dinged just because this building is going to have all the toilets and gold, which increases, all of these type of prices that's going to just cost me to buy the solution. So that's not great. User-based licenses, it all depends on what you're selling.
Yeah.
So sometimes user-based licenses work, but then if you're the seller, people abuse the heck out of that. So you lose money in the process. So I can't tell you what is the best structure and what is the best way to do it. It depends what you're selling. But the key thing is making sure that when you're selling it, or when you close that deal, you're going to be positive a couple $1,000, not negative a couple thousand. Maybe the first few deals, like, okay, you want to get people using it. But if you're going to build a solid business, past seed and series A, B, and so forth, like, you need to be having a price structure that like makes sense.
Yeah, which is even more difficult in startups because they are not supposed to be profitable, right?
Right. But the thing is, like, if you're selling and you're selling well and you're losing money in every single one of those deals, you're going to burn through your cash a lot faster than when you thought. And then you're going to start fundraising, and maybe it's not going to be a very pretty picture.
Okay.
Anton, now, how would you see the go-to-market strategy in construction tech changing in the next few years? And probably like leading this towards AI, and perhaps you already touched on that. But are there any other shifts within the industry that you're noticing?
Give us your dream, sorry.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. And I love these strategy questions, especially after having like days where I'm working very tactically and operationally to get like things moving and out the door.
Creative thinking.
Yeah. I've been, for myself, I'm very curious. I mean, it was kind of a hype thing, and maybe it still is, but I just don't hear about it as much as I used to, is product-led growth, which to me just made a lot of sense because it allowed the buyer to really have time with the product and trial the product and get a sense of it. However, I don't think it's conducive to very, expensive, maybe six-figure deal kind of plays. But there is something, I want to take the kind of I hope that we kind of take the perceived sliminess out of sales, that we get to a stage that if I'm calling someone as a salesperson, they're not thinking of me in a negative way, that we have developed and built processes and motions that has made people to a point that they don't see me as like someone that they have to avoid. They see me as someone who can help solve a problem that they have and want to have a relationship with me. It's very easy. Salespeople have at times pretty bad names, or it's like, oh God, you're a salesperson. Like, no, I don't want to talk to you. No, maybe you do. Let's chat. Like, I'm a problem solver. That's what I do. That's a dream of mine one day. Get into cocktail parties and not have people run the other way. But maybe that's who I am as a person.
That's a
Man, I
culture.
love salespeople. I think it's
I do
like
too.
a very admirable career.
We do have a bad rap, and some of that is very warranted, and it was set by other individuals. But I think in the end of the day, what is going to be the ideal like path, and what we see changes is AI is going to have an influence over it. I think AI is going to have more influence over the top of the funnel than maybe the execution of deals itself. I look forward to that. I mean, building out cadences and managing cadences with a complex group of young salespeople like SDRs. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort. And I think that could be a lot more efficient and effective. And I think we'll get there with AI. I think AI will help out quite a bit with marketing. And, the thing is, in the end of the day, most people are looking to make decisions by the content that they're reading. So I think a lot of this and where we're going to go from a sales perspective is that a lot of people are going to become, or a lot of companies are going to become content creators and become actually knowledgeable resources in the space of whatever problem that they're solving.
That will work for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the key word is knowledgeable.
That wouldn't work for us.
Yes, dude, you guys are the best.
It means a lot. Thank you, Anton.
Of course.
I love your content. I love what you're doing.
We just need to
So
sell you
honored to be
something
here.
now.
Yeah, we just need to sell you something now. Yeah. All right, guys.
I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
But Anton, thank you so much for coming on.
And tell us where people can find out more about you.
That's a good question because I try to hide from people. I'm just joking. If
Come
they
to
want
my
to find out
house.
about me, I guess LinkedIn is the best source for them to go to. I'm not very active. I mean, you guys are probably the one group that I talk to the most or put myself the most out there. Outside of that, I focus on trying to build a business right now.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We'd love to hear that.
Okay.
Thanks, Anton.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.